Welcome to Breaking Through Health Barriers. This is your host, Dr. Terry Wenner, bringing you education, motivation, and inspiration for healthy living. I'm a doctor of education, a registered nurse, a podcaster, a blogger, and a video producer, and I'm so glad you decided to listen in today. In today's episode, episode 9, we will be discussing New Year's resolutions, the benefits of avoiding known problems, and we are going to revisit the topic of vaping that we discussed earlier this year in episodes 1 and 2. So let's get started with New Year's resolutions. Here we are on December 31st, 2016, and New Year's resolutions are on everyone's mind. Some people avoid them at all costs, figuring they're nothing more than a setup for failure. And other people crave the opportunity for a clean slate, and New Year's represents an opportunity for them to wipe the slate clean and start anew. So the first question that comes to my mind today is, are New Year's resolutions worthwhile? Should we even bother with them? Well, from my perspective, I would have to say the answer is yes. They are definitely worthwhile. They provide us with a sense of guidance and help us pinpoint where we hope to end up 1 year later. So if you kind of look at it similar to traveling, if you want to go on a vacation, you need to do some planning to make it most beneficial. Here's a list of 10 things that I thought about that you would need to do in most cases to prepare for a vacation, and see if any of these sound familiar to you. Number 1, choose a location. Number 2, pick a date. Number 3, request the time off from work. 4, book a hotel or motel room, or at least find someplace to stay. Number 5, you might need to book plane tickets or reserve a spot on a cruise ship. Number 6, you may need to save some money to actually pay for the trip. Number 7, if you plan on leaving children, pets, or elderly parents behind, you may need to find suitable caregivers. Number 8, you might need to arrange someone to take care of things at home, like mail, watering your plants, watching your home, etc. And number 9, if you don't want to miss anything, you may need to plan excursions while you'll be away. So you may need to plan that snorkeling trip or diving with the dolphins. And then number 10, you might need to buy and pack the right kinds of clothes or accessories. You may find yourself having to buy a new swimsuit or a couple new evening attires. So, looking at that was a list for a relaxing vacation. So those were just 10 things that sort of came to my mind rather quickly. I'm sure you have other things that you could add to that list, but that was 10 fairly significant things you needed to do to relax. Could you imagine how challenging it would be to accomplish a goal without any plan? You need to have a plan, and the beginning of a new year is a great time to get started. But it's not the only time you can start something new. You can start anytime. You can start the first of any month. You can start any Monday morning. You could start any tomorrow morning, or even at the beginning of the next hour. I'm taping this around 1 o'clock. I could start an actual goal or resolution at 2 p.m. So it really is not time limited. We can start a new goal, new opportunity, new resolution any time of the day, year, month, anything. So there really are no limitations to when we can or should start or restart. So we have to keep that in mind. New Year's resolutions are an opportunity, but they are not limiting. So if you happen to be listening to this podcast and it is long past New Year's, no worries, no problems. You can start anytime that you like. So that was the first question. The second question is that, we should consider what it is that we're going to resolve to do. Well, there are no right or wrong answers to this question. You may have goals that are very different from your neighbor or your friend or your parent or your spouse or your child. They're all okay. You get to decide what is best for you. It may be physical health related. It may be emotional health related. It may be just a personal challenge that you have set out for yourself. They're all great. You get to decide what's best. I've covered many of the topics that I'm going to speak about in a few minutes in my first 4 YouTube videos. And so if you haven't really had a chance to check that out yet, I do invite you to take a look. There's a link in the show notes. It's not something that's easily searchable. You can't actually punch in my name and find it. You will need to have a link to the actual channel, but I'm providing that in the show notes, so you could check that out if you like. But what I encourage people to do is, even though there's no right or wrong answers to what you should resolve to do, there are some basic guidelines that I give you that will help you set yourself up for success rather than failure. So there are 6 things that I'm going to discuss. And as I mentioned, you can check out the YouTube videos for a little bit more details on these. But the first one is choosing a reasonable amount of goals. So I recommend limiting your number of goals to 3. 3 is a pretty workable number. And if you meet all 3, you can always add some new ones mid-year. It's not a problem to be short on goals, but it can be a problem if you spread yourself too thin and you've really set yourself up for failure early on. You don't want to do that. So number 2 is to choose reasonable goals. Okay, so if you were to resolve to become President of the United States of America in 2017, that's totally unrealistic. We already have gone through extensive campaignings, a big presidential campaign, vote, and a decision, and we have our inaugural address coming up very soon. So it's really not realistic for you to think you're going to be president in 2017. However, you very well could choose to become more involved with politics, to learn more about it, to become active in some way. So political goals for yourself are totally fine. You may find that during the Trump campaign, you are interested in learning more about what he's doing and staying on top of things a little bit more than you have been in the past, no matter which side of the campaign you were voting on. So the goals should be reasonable. Number 3, make them measurable. Okay, so saying that you want to lose weight sounds great, but how will you know if you succeeded? Would a 1 ounce weight loss be sufficient? How about 1 pound? Probably neither of those are going to come close to the real goals. So I encourage you to, in order to make this measurable, you have to look at what your ideal weight would be, what your current weight would be, and decide what a reasonable goal for 1 year would be. If you have hundreds of pounds to lose, which many people do, there's no shame in that, but once you acknowledge that, you want to work toward meeting that goal. It may be unrealistic to think you're going to reach ideal weight in 1 calendar year. So set an actual number aside and go for that goal, and that'll make your goal measurable. You need to have the right motivation. So you will only be successful if your motivation comes from within. Sometimes it may start outwardly, but it has to eventually become internal. If your spouse or significant other tells you to lose weight, but you have no desire to give up your daily dose of sweets, you're likely to fail. But if you finally had enough of having to buy new, bigger clothes every year, and you hate what you see in the mirror, and the reward becomes more important to you than the pain of change, then you're motivated and ready to go. But you can't be motivated on someone else's words. You have to make them your own. If you don't care about something, you're not going to do it. You're the one that has to get up out of bed every day, decide what you're going to eat, decide whether you're going to exercise, decide whether you're going to try to be kind to people or continue being a pain in the butt. You have to be properly motivated. Okay, number 5 is you have to have a plan B. So no matter how hard we try, there's always going to be something that gets in the way of our plans. We may decide that we're going to bike ride every day for the next 2 weeks. And sure enough, on ride 1, the bike breaks. It has to go into the shop for next 2 weeks. That doesn't mean you can skip exercise for 2 weeks because your bike's broken. No, you have to have a backup plan. You have to decide you're going to walk or run or hike or go to the gym or watch exercise videos and participate or do something. So you always want to have a backup plan so that if plan A does fail, you have a plan B ready and waiting. And then my 6th item here on just some guidelines for resolutions, I find this to be the most important one. You have to resolve to not quit. You don't want your New Year's resolution to be tossed aside in a number of days, weeks, or even months. You want to be the one that when it comes to December 31st, you have actually stuck with that plan for the entire year. And you have actually made great progress, if not fully accomplished that goal. So in order for that to happen, you have to resolve from day one that you're not going to quit no matter what. So, if you decide that you're going to exercise 5 days a week, you get the flu and you can't get out of bed for a week, that doesn't mean the goal's gone. That means you restart when you're healthy. So you're not off the hook. Rest up, heal up, get healthy again physically, and then get right back on track. Resolutions that are worthwhile will withstand the test of time. You can do this. I know you can do this. So I want you to, use these 6 recommendations and plan to succeed. So I do want to add a little bit about a personal example from my goals for last year. So my personal example from 2015. Last year, I made 5 New Year's resolutions. So that would be, starting in January 16. And I was recently reminded of these as they popped up on my Facebook page as what happened last year at this time. So out of the 5 things, I'm proud to say that one of those I completed with flying colors. I was successful in defending my dissertation, and I graduated with my doctoral degree on September 7th, I believe it was, 2016. Woohoo, thank God that one's over. But that required a huge amount of work to accomplish that. Those of you who know me personally, walked alongside of me through that, know how challenging that was. And to be honest with you, one goal would have been enough because that was that overwhelming of a goal. But out of my list of 5, that was the only one that I successfully completed. There was another item on the list that I actually decided to remove from my goal list. I had decided that it was time for a new car and I wanted a sportier looking one. And, I currently have a 2006 Toyota Corolla, and I just thought, Dr. Wenner certainly has worked hard, and she deserves a new, nice car. So I had put that as a goal. But as things in my life changed, my financial situation changed, and I really began to reevaluate that goal. My Corolla still runs great. Even being 10 years old, I was the only owner, garage kept. I've taken good care of it. Try not to go out when it's, dangerous weather and things like that. And honestly, I decided that to do that, continue with that goal, would really be unnecessary and inappropriate at this stage in my life. So I actually took that goal off the list. It's not that I don't still want a nice sportier car. It's just not something that is pressing enough to keep on my goal list right now. So out of the 5 goals, 1 was met, 1 was removed from the list, and then I was left with 3. So the 3 goals, looking back, trying to tackle 5 things, especially one of which was a dissertation, was just too much. The dissertation drained too much of my time, money, and energy to really focus fully on anything else. But being the high achiever that I am, I had to learn that lesson the hard way. But the 3 that are left are still very worthwhile goals. I made some decent progress on 2 of them, and I learned a lot. But 1 I actually lost ground on. So I went backwards. I did not move toward the goal at all. I moved further away from it. So for 2017, I'm going to leave those 3 items on the list. I'm not going to give up on them. They were worthwhile last year. They're still worthwhile this year. But I am going to make a more diligent attempt at meeting them. And I'm going to have to come up with some plan Bs because plan A didn't really work. So I hope that you'll, consider what goals you have in mind for yourself this year and that you'll share some of them with me and hopefully the listeners of the podcast. You can email me directly, leave a comment on the website, however you would like to share that. But, you could also share them with your family and friends if you're not quite ready to share things publicly online. But in the nutshell, I'm trying to say New Year's goals are worthwhile efforts. You should make them, but you should make them wisely, and you should not give up no matter what. Okay, moving on to our next section of today's podcast, Dr. Terry's health tip and challenge of the week. So today's health tip is about avoiding known problem areas. So on the one hand, this sentence sounds like it's so simple, why should she even call it a tip? But on the other hand, most of us never take the time to do this, and it really is a worthwhile thing. So what I'm talking about is avoiding problem areas of your life that keep coming up over and over again. They're predictable. You know about them. You know the kinds of things that you're going to fall into the trap for. Things like walking down the ice cream aisle. And, if you're trying to avoid buying your favorite flavor on sale, walking down the aisle is not going to help. You're going to see, the attractive ice cream container. You're going to see that sales sticker, and you're going to be drawn in. So, you have to make a decision to not go down there if you want to avoid buying it. That kind of thing. So perhaps you might need to start avoiding being alone with somebody that you always fight with when others aren't around, or avoid making plans with somebody who always cancels at the last minute, causing you to feel hurt and upset. If you're having trouble thinking of an area to tackle here for the challenge, I'm going to give you some thought-provoking topics that might, kind of stir something in your mind. Sometimes we just don't realize something has become, a thorn in our side until someone else points it out. So take a listen at some possibilities and see if anything pops up in your mind as something that might be worth trying to avoid in the upcoming year. So the first one, physically, is there a certain food that tempts you so badly that you find yourself totally unable to resist it? I know for me, sweets and carbs are a big trap. You may have other things that are more problematic for you. Emotionally, is there someone that always makes negative comments when you get together? This could be anybody. It could be a relative, a friend, a coworker, a neighbor, an acquaintance, but somebody that just always brings you down. Spiritually, do you have someone in your life that always rolls their eyes when you talk about prayer? You may not want to make a decision on the spot, and you say, I need to pray about that. I need to give that a little time with prayer, and they roll their eyes like you're from outer space. That's somebody that is not, believing what you believe and is a problem for you. Intellectually, are you ever criticized for wanting to learn and grow? For choosing reading over a night on the town, or choosing to enroll in a cooking class instead of buying another new outfit. You want to stimulate your intellectual side, and the people that you're around don't. Are they kind of creating an issue for you there? And then my last possible topic for you is relationally. Is there someone in your life that just doesn't make time for you? Someone who doesn't see your value and really could care less about hurting your feelings? Is that somebody who does that consistently and continues to make you feel bad or sets you up to feel bad? If thinking about one of these 5 areas struck a chord with you, that's your problem area. That's the thing that happens over and over again. And what I'm encouraging you to do today is to think about, something predictable that happens regularly and elicits a poor response for you. And then I want you to start figuring out a way to avoid it. So, for example, if you end up eating too many chocolate chip cookies, or always feel inadequate about one of these situations, or made to feel stupid because you want to pray or take some more time to think about something or make healthy choices, these are your problem areas, and these are things that you can make plans to avoid. The reality is you can stop the bleeding in many of these areas if you put a little time and effort into thinking about how to do that. So on a personal level, for the first time ever, I chose not to make Christmas cookies this year. I know it was heartbreaking for my family. Certainly I wasn't thrilled about the decision either, but I can't stop eating them if they're in my house. So, even if I make one batch, I will literally sit there and eat them until they're gone. So I have a problem with sugar, and I needed to make a decision to not let that happen. So the good news is that I did not overeat chocolate chip cookies this Christmas. The bad news is I didn't have really any. But, it comes and goes, and I'm not 5 pounds heavier because of chocolate chip cookies. So that's an example for me of how I stop the bleeding. I avoided the problem. Why would I tell somebody that I'm going to pray if they think it's a waste of time? Maybe perhaps you could just say to them, rephrase things a little bit. Say, I really need a little more time to consider that. They don't need to know that your consideration involves prayer. Why pour salt on wounds and just keep stirring up trouble? As I mentioned earlier, avoid the ice cream aisle, avoid unnecessary pain, and start living a satisfied life today, a more satisfied life. So wrapping this section up, the challenge of the week is that I challenge you to identify one area that continues to cause you trouble over and over again, that you're ready to make a change in. and then think of just one way that you can start to avoid the issue. And then if you're willing, certainly share that with me, a close friend, or even post it on the comment section of our website. Okay, now for our last segment of today, we're going to revisit the topic of vaping. So I have a little bit of a story here to get us started. About 1 week ago, I discovered that unfortunately I had not been receiving any of the messages that were sent through the contact section on my website. So I frequently say, oh, make sure you leave me a comment, use the contact section, etc. But unfortunately, they weren't coming to my email box like I thought they were. About 4 months had gone by, and I did not know any of these messages were sitting in a folder inside my website account, not being delivered to me. So when I found out, I was very bummed out about that. Wasn't intentional. And since I, don't have the power to travel back in time and fix it, there wasn't anything I could do to correct that. My deepest apologies to anyone who wrote to me and didn't receive a prompt response. It was unintentional, but I am deeply sorry that happened. But when I went through the comments or the contacts, there was one listener who I'm going to refer to as Mr. Butterscotch that had left me not one, but 3 messages that I had not responded to. Mr. Butterscotch is actually a friend of my husband's. I had mentioned him in my first podcast as somebody who's chosen to take up vaping as a replacement for cigarettes, and his preferred vape juice flavor is butterscotch, so he has earned the name Mr. Butterscotch. Well, as it turns out, Mr. Butterscotch has done extensive research on the topic of vaping, and he had provided me with several links with additional research articles on the subject, and I am including all of them in the show notes for you, so feel free to check them out if you'd like some additional information. But the one that I specifically want to talk about today is the Cochrane Review from 2016. If you haven't heard of that before, a Cochrane Review is a resource that it's based on research, and it's internationally recognized as the highest standard in evidence-based healthcare resources. The reason it has such a high standard is that it evaluates and compares all the research that was done that answered one central research question. And what they do is they analyze and combine all the results so that you get the compiled research results instead of looking at just one article. The Cochrane Review, researchers, they do update the reviews periodically. And the one that Mr. Butterscotch sent me to was actually the second one that was done on e-cigarettes for smoking cessation. The first one had been done just in 2014, so only 2 years ago today. And, the review was felt to be warranted already. There were 11 additional articles included in the update. So this is a topic that is continuing to develop and grow. The current review makes several conclusions that I want to discuss today, and they're all based on the research. Definitely, I think they're an interesting thing. There were 6 conclusion statements that they made that I think are worth reviewing with you today. The first one is that e-cigarettes do help smokers quit. And before I even go any further, I wanted to let you know, today I posted a link to this Cochrane Review on a couple online social media sites. I put it up on Facebook, I put it up on Twitter, and I put it up on Reddit as a resource. Well, immediately on Twitter, I started getting responses from other Twitter users telling me stories of how much e-cigarettes have personally helped them. They want the research to support that, but their personal experiences are saying loud and clear that this has made a difference in their lives. So I, first of all, want to say that, the personal responses coming in are supporting this research, which is a great thing. So e-cigarettes do help smokers quit. So that seems to be, pretty evident in the research. The other thing, though, is that the research is not quite strong enough at this time. More research is definitely needed. So one of the Twitter users that wrote to me wanted to know, why don't we have more research, and what do we need to do, and why isn't it being done? Well, the reality is that there are plenty more studies in progress, but it takes time to do research. It takes time to publish those results. And we also are interested in, long-term safety results as well. And you can't do anything except wait out time for long-term results. So I believe that we are seeing continued research. The review here itself actually said there were at least 15 randomized controlled trials going on that were probably going to be eligible to be included in the next time a review is done. So that's good news. The third item on my list was that none of the studies reported serious adverse effects that were felt to be related to e-cigarette use. So that is another good sign that we're not, seeing major life events happen because of e-cigarette use. The most commonly reported side effects were irritation to the mouth and throat. So that kind of makes sense. As I mentioned, long-term safety is unknown, so that was something that they felt was important to emphasize. And then the last one I already mentioned, that there's at least 15 randomized controlled trials, which are essentially experiments. Some people are told to do one type of thing, like perhaps use, actual vape juice that has nicotine. Maybe other people are using vape juice that does not have nicotine. And maybe some people are just using flavored water that doesn't have things in it at all. So, there's the need for that, and it is being done. So wrapping that section up, I just want to thank Mr. Butterscotch for providing us with these updated resources. I also want to thank the Twitter users that are bold enough to be out there with their thoughts and opinions on this topic. I can tell that it's very important to many of them. I think it has great national and international health consequences if we find that this is really much more beneficial thing and can help people get off of real cigarettes. It's going to be a wonderful thing. As the research continues to come in, we hope to see more positive results. I really enjoyed reviewing all these research articles, so thank you for sending them to me. And I do hope to revisit this topic from time to time to see what the latest research is showing. Okay, so our reflection questions are quite simple in today's podcast. Number 1, what are your 2017 New Year's resolutions? Number 2, do you have a plan to avoid one known problem in your life? And number 3, what are your personal experiences with vaping? So if there's more of you out there that have an opinion, a thought on this, I invite you to write me or to write a comment in the website comment section. That would be wonderful. Okay, so for wrap up today, you may have heard these things before, but in case you haven't, the podcast episodes are available for download on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Google Play Music, Android, and RSS. So subscribe now so you don't miss any episodes. And if you happen to use iTunes or Stitcher Radio, I'd appreciate an honest review on those services. They help us to spread the word about the services that we offer here. You're invited to stop by my website, drterrywenner.com, and sign up for regular website updates if you're interested. I offer some free gifts if you are interested in signing up and getting a free gift. I also have pretty strong social media presence, so if you prefer to follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Google+, you can check me out on those sites as well. And last but not least, you can also check me out on the YouTube channel that I mentioned with the link being in the show notes. I now have a weekly video series called Health Mentoring Moments about the most common topics that people have either asked me or I hear in passing. So those are great resources for you. I hope that if you enjoy my content, that you share it with a family member or friend to spread the good news and get more people benefiting from this. So this is Dr. Terry Wenner. Together we're going to break through as many health barriers as possible and live happier, healthier lives. Until next time, enjoy each and every day you're given and have a happy new year.